It started as a quiet afternoon in a small town, just another day for 93-year-old James, a proud war veteran who had lived through more challenges than most of us could imagine. Known for his quiet strength and wisdom, James was on his usual walk to the local store, leaning on his cane but carrying himself with dignity. Little did he know that his path would soon cross with a group of rowdy bikers, and what unfolded next would leave everyone speechless. The bikers were gathered outside the store, their loud laughter and revving engines cutting through the calm neighborhood. At first, James didn't pay them any mind. He had seen his fair share of tough guys in his lifetime and wasn't one to be intimidated easily. But as he walked past, one of the bikers made a snide remark, followed by another. Soon, the group's focus shifted to James, mocking his age and frailty, clearly underestimating the man they were dealing with. What they didn't know was that James wasn't just an elderly man with a cane. He was a decorated veteran who had faced adversities far greater than their petty harassment. With each taunt, James remained calm, but there was a fire in his eyes that hinted he had something up his sleeve. As the situation escalated, the tension in the air was palpable. Then, with surprising composure, James did something that turned the entire situation on its head. What happened next not only silenced the bikers, but taught everyone present a lesson they would never forget. Stay tuned to hear how James' bold and unexpected response left these bikers completely stunned and reminded us all what true strength and resilience look like. James stood there, steady as a rock, gripping his cane. The bikers, sensing no immediate pushback, grew bolder. They jeered, their laughter echoing across the parking lot. Some onlookers nearby shuffled uncomfortably, unsure if they should intervene. After all, what could one elderly man do against a group like this? But James wasn't the type to back down. His silence wasn't a sign of fear. It was the calm before a storm. The lead biker, a towering man with tattoos creeping up his neck, stepped forward and got right in James' face. "What's the matter, old man? Lost your way?" he sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. The others rolled with laughter, their voices blending with the rumble of their bikes. But James didn't flinch. He looked the man square in the eyes, his gaze steady, unyielding. It wasn't the look of a frail, scared man. It was the look of someone who had faced much worse and come out stronger. What the bikers didn't realize was that James had spent years in combat, facing situations far more dangerous than this. He had endured hardships, fought for freedom, and carried the weight of memories that most of us would struggle to bear. His life had been a testament to resilience, and he wasn't about to let a group of bikers tarnish his dignity. A small crowd had begun to gather, watching the interaction unfold. Whispers spread. Some recognized James as the old war hero who had once saved lives in the heat of battle. The tension thickened as James took a slow step forward, gripping his cane tightly. No one could predict what he would do next. His calm demeanor only added to the suspense, leaving everyone wondering how this unlikely confrontation would play out. The lead biker smirked as James took that deliberate step forward, thinking the old man was bluffing. "What are you gonna do with that cane, Grandpa?" he sneered, his voice dripping with arrogance. The other bikers laughed, fueling the tension, but James remained unfazed. His eyes, filled with the weight of experience, never left the biker's face. His silence wasn't weakness, it was calculation. The crowd, now larger, stayed glued to the scene, unsure whether to step in or stay back. Everyone could feel it. Something was about to happen, and no one wanted to miss it. Meanwhile, James's calm exterior belied the emotions swirling within him. He thought about all the battles he fought, not just in war but in life. He had survived gunfire, discrimination, and the loss of friends he once called brothers. Compared to that, this group of bikers seemed like nothing more than a test of his patience. But James also knew that dignity wasn't something you begged for, it was something you demanded. The biker closest to him leaned in, trying to intimidate James further. But before he could say another word, James spoke, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Son, you have no idea who you're dealing with," he said. His words weren't loud, but they carried an authority that cut through the noise. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, their laughter faltering. For a moment, even the crowd seemed to hold its breath. Meanwhile, James's calm exterior belied the emotions swirling within him. He thought about all the battles he fought, not just in war but in life. He had survived gunfire, discrimination, and the loss of friends he once called brothers. Compared to that, this group of bikers seemed like nothing more than a test of his patience. But James also knew that dignity wasn't something you begged for, it was something you demanded. The biker closest to him leaned in, trying to intimidate James further. But before he could say another word, James spoke, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Son, you have no idea who you're dealing with," he said. His words weren't loud, but they carried an authority that cut through the noise. The bikers exchanged uneasy glances, their laughter faltering. For a moment, even the crowd seemed to hold its breath. One of the onlookers, a younger man who had admired James for years, stepped forward cautiously. "That's Mr. James," he said loudly enough for the bikers to hear. "He's a war hero. Fought for this country when people like you wouldn't even dare." The tension deepened as the bikers started to realize they had picked the wrong target. But the question lingered. What would James do next? No one dared to move, waiting for the moment to unfold, quickly losing the upper hand. The balance of power was shifting, and they felt it. James finally broke the silence, his voice calm but piercing. "You think strength comes from numbers, from noise," he said, looking directly at the leader. "Real strength is standing for something, even when you stand alone." His words hit like a hammer, echoing in the air. The bikers were now visibly uneasy, their confidence unraveling. But just as the tension reached its peak, James raised a hand, stopping the younger man from stepping closer. The crowd leaned in, breathless, as they waited for James's next move. It was clear that this was no ordinary man, and whatever he was about to do would be a moment no one would forget. As James stood there, hand raised, the crowd watched in silence. The lead biker, now visibly rattled, tried to mask his unease. "We don't want any trouble," he muttered, his voice softer. But James wasn't finished. He took one last step forward, close enough that the leader couldn't avoid his piercing gaze. "Trouble," James said, his voice calm but firm. "You brought trouble when you chose disrespect over decency. And now you're looking for a way out." Before anyone could respond, the roar of another engine broke through the tension. Heads turned as another motorcycle approached from the far end of the parking lot. The rider, clad in black with a helmet that reflected the afternoon sun, parked a few feet away. The crowd parted slightly as the figure stepped off the bike and removed their helmet, revealing a woman with a no-nonsense expression. She strode forward with purpose, her boots clicking against the pavement. It was clear she wasn't just any rider. As she approached, one of the bikers muttered under his breath, "Oh no, it's her." The leader's face tightened, and his previous confidence vanished completely. The woman stopped beside James, her gaze sweeping over the group of bikers. "You boys causing problems again?" she asked, her tone sharp and unforgiving. The bikers stood frozen, unsure how to respond. The crowd whispered among themselves, and someone murmured, "That's Sarah. She runs the local riders chapter." Her reputation was well known. She didn't tolerate bullies, even among her own. She glanced at James, her expression softening slightly. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked, and James nodded, the faintest hint of a smile crossing his face. But the moment didn't ease the tension, it deepened it. The bikers were now caught between James's unshakable presence and Sarah's commanding authority. The leader opened his mouth to speak, but Sarah cut him off. "I think it's time you and your crew learned some respect," she said coldly. The stakes had shifted again, and the crowd braced for what was coming next. The question now wasn't whether the bikers would back down. It was how far this confrontation would go before it ended. The leader of the bikers shifted uneasily, his bravado now completely gone under Sarah's piercing glare. The crowd stood in silence, the tension almost unbearable. James, still calm, stepped back slightly, giving Sarah the space to take control. She turned to the group, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You think you can ride into town, intimidate people, and walk away like nothing happened," she said, her tone firm. "Not here, not on my watch." The lead biker glanced around, realizing that the crowd wasn't on his side, and neither was Sarah. His crew, once boisterous and loud, now looked down at the ground, avoiding eye contact. Sensing he was losing control of the situation, the leader attempted to save face. "We didn't mean any harm," he muttered, trying to sound apologetic. But Sarah wasn't buying it. "Didn't mean any harm," she repeated, her voice rising slightly. "Mocking a 93-year-old veteran, does that sound harmless to you?" Her words hit hard, and the crowd murmured in agreement. "If you've got any decency left, you'll apologize to this man right now." The leader hesitated, his pride warring with his fear of further humiliation. Finally, he looked at James and mumbled, "I'm sorry." It wasn't much, but it was a start. The rest of the bikers followed, offering awkward apologies that barely carried any weight. James didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at Sarah and gave her a small nod, as if to say, "You handled that well." Just as the tension seemed to ease, James spoke again, his voice steady. "You boys might think this is over, but I'll tell you one last thing," he said, leaning slightly on his cane. "Respect isn't given because someone forces you to say sorry. It's earned through actions, so if you're serious, prove it." The leader's face went pale, realizing that James wasn't just letting them walk away without reflection. Sarah stepped forward again, her voice calm but firm. "And until you figure that out," she said, pointing to the group's bikes, "you're not welcome back here." As the bikers awkwardly mounted their bikes and rode off, the crowd erupted in applause. James, ever composed, turned to Sarah. "You didn't have to step in, but I'm glad you did," he said. She smiled, replying, "Sometimes standing up to bullies takes more than one person." And just when everyone thought the drama had ended, James tapped his cane on the ground and added with a sleek grin, "By the way, next time, I'll handle them myself." The crowd laughed, and for the first time, the tension lifted completely. It was a day no one in town would ever forget, a reminder that courage, respect, and unity always prevail. As the sound of the bikers' engines faded into the distance, the crowd began to disperse, the tension finally giving way to a sense of relief and admiration. People approached James, shaking his hand and thanking him for standing his ground. Some even shared stories of how he had inspired them over the years, reminding everyone of the quiet strength and resilience he had always carried. James listened with a modest smile, brushing off the praise in his humble way. "I just did what anyone else should do," he said, though everyone knew his courage was anything but ordinary. Sarah stayed by James's side, ensuring he was all right before heading back to her bike. She turned to him one last time. "If they come back, you let me know," she said with a grin. James chuckled, tapping his cane on the ground. "I think we scared them off for good," he replied. "But if not, I've got a few tricks left up my sleeve." The two exchanged a nod of respect. Different generations, different battles, but the same unwavering spirit. As James walked back toward his car, the younger man who had spoken up earlier caught up with him. "Mr. James," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "what you did today, it meant a lot. You showed us all what it means to stand up for yourself, no matter the odds." James paused, looking at the young man with a thoughtful expression. "It's not about the odds," he said. "It's about knowing who you are and never letting anyone take that away from you." The crowd slowly cleared, leaving James alone for a moment. He glanced around the parking lot, the faint hum of life returning to normal. With a small, satisfied smile, he opened his car door, climbed in, and drove away, the afternoon sun casting a golden glow on the quiet town. It was a day that wouldn't soon be forgotten, a reminder that dignity, courage, and standing together could make all the difference.